The Black Death in marriage/families. How did the Black Death affect people's lives, and how was marriage and families involved? Once, there was a plague that spread across Europe, killing millions and millions in the process. This turn of events was known as the Black Death. During the Black Death, a lot of hope was lost. People changed out of fear, and life was surrounded around just being able to survive on a daily basis. But there was nothing they could do about it. Person after person dropped dead, and all seemed doomed at that point. In their minds, they couldn't think of anything other than that was the end of the world as they knew it. Socially, things were a mess for most. Many were left to die alone because people were afraid of going near them for the possibilities of getting infected. That also meant that relying on anyone but yourself wasn't an option a lot of the times. Big urban cities like Paris and Bordeaux made it especially hard to trust with so much around them. Compared to rural areas, infections in urban areas spread like wildfire, and because of that, recovery was such a long road ahead. For rural areas, because they were so spread out, the plague wasn't so popular there. But even though rural areas were better off, that didn't help the population much. 80 to 90% of cities and towns were wiped clean of living existence all over the country. And as you can see, the urban cities were a lot closer than the rural areas, and that explains why the plague spread so much in the urban areas. But even through that, there was another light for the people who weren't just in rural areas. And this light was marriage and families. They provided peace and satisfaction for them and gave them something to hold onto through the hard times. Prostitution was easy distraction for both men and women, and also gave men experience before having to go into marriage when they hit the age of 30. For women, it gave them money to live off and a sexual outlet. And if children occurred, deep emotional bonds were within the families most of the time, and provided tighter moral and emotional unity between marriages, which was a much needed support by the citizens in Europe during the Black Death. But still, not everyone had a wife or husband to hold on to. They weren't only alone physically, but spiritually lost. Priests rejected the sick and were dying at a rapid pace. This created a dead end for people, making any sign of hope that much more diminished. Churches weren't exactly safe anymore, but people turned to holy lands as excuses to escape. Along with this, there were many who believed that the Black Death was a punishment from God for their sins. So line by line, they walked in rows down the dirt roads and whipped themselves, exposing their blood to the sickness in the air around them. Another reason for the spread of the disease. And because no one was answering their prayers or solving the questions they had, they scapegoated the Jews. They slaughtered and burned them without hesitance. They accused them of poisoning the wells and contaminating the air. Without the spiritual help, and with death all around them, there wasn't all that much care for the sick ones. There were small hospitals, but they were put in twos and threes and squished on beds with people they didn't even know. Being put in those hospitals was like hospice in our time, because there was absolutely no hope for you if you ended up there. Funerals weren't even done either due to the number of infected people, and this was a turn from their religions. After the Black Death came upon them, there was no more room for caring. there was no more room for humanity. People changed for the worse from the start of it all, and it was all due to the fear they felt. It wasn't until years later did the Europeans finally get the break from the plague that they so deeply prayed for.